Okay, from an industry perspective, just to get a general feel for everybody here, how many have been using some sort of BIM, Building Information Enabled Technology, for 1 to 3 years? Okay, how many are +3? Okay, good to see. So you all know what you're going through in terms of maturity. We're finding that as our industry adopts it more, owners and contractors are beginning to include BIM requirements. But the reality is there's no cohesive standard around what it is. An owner can put in an RFP, you'll provide a BIM at the end of the project. Well, what is that? What does that mean? And so we're finding that as we go across the country and in talking to various individuals and groups, that there's starting to be a consistency in what's being asked for in terms of deliverables. Clearly, the model itself, many will agree, has little to no residual value at the end of the job. It's very hard to integrate it into anything. So it's more around what are the deliverables at the end to allow, for example, facilities management. So there's early adoption of COBie standards in the early going, and finding that as we move through, that information is maturing. So a lot of mechanical engineers, architects, and mechanical contractors and owners are gravitating more to that aspect. BIM requirements, we're trying to help out as well. I know that myself and Bruce McCollum have actually, in Alberta, have helped the Alberta infrastructure write the right things into their RFPs around BIM deliverables. So that's something that, as we find from an industry perspective, is still needed. There is clearly mixed level of adoption amongst everybody. Some are using it simply to model. Others are using it to mine the data that's within the model itself. And we're finding as well that many are transitioning, providing the model in some form, whether it's exported out to another building information enabled piece of technology, or it's direct access to the model itself. At the end of the day, we're seeing this very much a tug and pull, push and pull process of BIM adoption. Certainly we're finding that BIM execution plans are emerging as a standard. Many offices and many organizations have this now. However, I'm sure all of you have downloaded the Penn State BIM execution plan and had that blank look as to really what do you do with that document. But that is being simplified down to the point where a very simple BIM execution plan is even contained within our protocol, the AEC CanBIM standard. And they have as well evolving uses as you move through. Many offices now across Canada, for particularly the architects and the engineers, are really beginning to look more at process rather than content. How do I use this technology to mature a process along so that I can provide consistent, coordinated, complete, and to a degree substantially accurate information that is useful to the construction end? Rather than what tends to happen right now is using the building information enabled technologies for design and then discarding that and then having it used in construction. So the recreation of models is something that a BIM execution plan will begin to create a common language around, so that the expectation in the construction end when design is being done is that that information is going to be useful and transferable. Obviously, there's a whole schism around the legal aspects of handing over the BIM. The reality is that there is no problem. Nobody has been sued yet, and you'll hear from Paul Stocko, another one of our directors to date, an update. So when I get asked, do you provide the model? I say yes and no. It depends upon the procurement. So that's another aspect. What is the procurement model around the BIM execution plan? Because traditional design, bid, build, no, there's no value at all. You don't get paid for doing the next person's job. But design, build, and IPD, these are all environments in which the model has immense value. So again, that BIM execution plan becomes critical. Long-term use of models are being explored, but are certainly not maturing. We're not seeing anything right yet where the model has actually gone from its nascent design stage all the way through to a fully useful facilities management plug and play where you don't even need facilities management staff because the BIM is going to do all the ordering for the light parts and everything else. That's getting there, but it's going along in pieces. We're seeing adoption certainly change now from where it was some years ago. As you can see here in this graph of looking at the 2009, 12, and 14, the McGraw-Hill review, and this pretty well matches what we're seeing in Canada. Percentage of BIM being used on over 60% of projects in offices, and that's a considerable amount of projects. You can see how really where the greatest leap has occurred is within the contracting community. That has been a consistent trend where in more recent years, using it has become more and more common. Certainly we see the greatest use still resides within the architectural community, but that is somewhat disparate because it's to what degree is it being used? Is it simply to inform at a 3D level to perhaps a design development and then export out to AutoCAD? So that is something that is being explored. But certainly we're seeing this trend here, and certainly CanBIM is wanting to ensure that we help each of these groups mature in this way. So to talk about scope, in terms of emerging best practices, many of you will have seen the LOD 2013 specification that came out in September of last year, where it describes level of development. It's not level of detail. And sometimes the LOD, all these acronyms just get us so confused. But basically, you can treat LOD, or level of development, as a conversation. What are you going to provide at what level? So there is no such thing as we're finding with this best practice, LOD for schematic design. Schematic design can contain information at various levels of development, whether it's 100, an Excel spreadsheet, all the way through to 350, where it's information around joint fabrication. So those things are certainly coming along, and we're seeing more and more across the country the adoption of that standard as a means to create a conversation with everybody involved. It is an excellent document to explore. One of the things I know the Designers Committee, in conjunction with some that they've talked with on the General Contractors Committee, is can we develop a joint level of development that could be used? We could append to an RFP, for example, to say, here, when you ask for BIM, here is what's going to be developed, and here's the expectation beyond the design into construction of what the contractor can expect. Then that allows that contractor, depending upon the nature, to augment it. In a design build, they could work together to explore avenues of where that level of development needs to be spent. We think this is an important emerging best practice because right now is a tendency to over-model. And that is just adding size and content that's unnecessary. BIM Execution Plan is going to certainly become more and more a trend. I think it's important that you have one in all of your RFPs to describe what the expectations are and tie it to that level of development. Model coordination we're going to talk about, but in terms of what is coordinated, what is looked at from a clash detection point of view. At BIM and facility management, it still is very much at that COBie level. However, one of the emerging best practices is around Maximo, which is an IBM product that many owners are beginning to use to help them manage their facilities. And Maximo has worked closely with Autodesk to develop a plugin that could work to extract that information. But the importance is that that information has to be right at the outset. Integrated Project Delivery, IPD, is a process that's starting to emerge now in Canada. We know of at least 2, if not 3, public sector projects which use incentivization. And IPD isn't just that we all talk and smile more. It is about changing the nature of compensation, engagement, and contractual frameworks. So there's at least 2 or 3 public sector. I'm aware of 2 in Alberta that are private sector IPD. One that ourselves are involved in another group that is a private sector in the $15 million range. So that's going to be interesting to see how we watch those as an emerging best practice to provide content. Paul Stocko is legal counsel for both of those IPDs. And on our way out this morning, Paul and I were talking about providing a best practice, a white paper on what to do if you're doing a private sector IPD. So these are things that are emerging best practices that we're looking very closely at. We continue to put a lot of emphasis into the AEC CanBIM protocol. This is a very important document to us, working with our counterparts in the UK, AEC UK protocol, and a group out of Australia and New Zealand, ANZAR's group. We've been in communication with them as to how this can be developed. And as of December, we connected in with a group out of Building Smart Alliance, with a number in the US, as to how we could mature this and perhaps look at it being presented for version 3 of NBIMS on a ballot. So some of the things: greater input from the engineers, summer release this year of it, and greater clarity on legal aspects. And a continued focus on all designers who are looking to working with BIM in a consistent and coordinated approach. As mentioned, BIM execution plans are going to be something to look closely. Who models what, level of development, naming, exchange rules, and model organization framework, such as is it a unified file, is it a federated file? And just to point out, this is a slide that Tom and I know we need to change because it shows how rapidly this industry is changing. Some time ago, level of development was considered around the deliverables that we used to think of traditionally: schematic design, design development. Now level of development is evolving around what information is matured to provide to people who can make the right decisions at the right time in a process. So the complete upheaval that is going to take place could have us starting fabrication before we've even finished the complete design. So then level of development is around maturity and more about what content is needed for that step in time. And integrated project delivery frameworks. We're hoping that we can certainly share best practices around that. We'll look to the public sector projects that are going on and gather in this so that you as new members can rely on this information as a pan-Canadian approach, not something that we've lifted out of the pages of AIA. And as everybody knows, it's a different world legally in the US than it is in Canada. So again, making sure these mature to our level. And I think this still describes the process that we see as best as it is at this time. No longer, from a best practices point of view, can we think solely of ourselves as architects, engineers, and contractors. As designers, we are interwoven with all aspects of procurement, assembly, and operation. Decisions we're beginning to make around building information-enabled projects do inform the process downstream. We can no longer think in isolation or as silos. We have to think of design decisions as impacting all other aspects, assembly and construction as impacting design, procurement, and operation. And that's something that BIM is really bringing to light for us. In terms of model coordination, we're finding that more and more are using very simple tools. Yes, some are even using 2D content or very, very simply modeled 3D content to describe. You don't need to have the ductwork with the rivets and the insulation and the hangers neatly all detailed. What you need to do is describe it at the level of development to inform the process. But then we want to get to the site. When we get to construction, traditionally that's where the chasm is opened up, the problems occur. But Tom is going to talk now on the aspect of how all of this comes together when we talk about model coordination within a master coordination model environment.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of do a little overview of some of the technologies that we're seeing from our perspective that are emerging. Like Allan mentioned, one of the key things that we're doing as a company that we're seeing most of the general contractors in Canada do is manage all the 3D information that flows on the project and maintain a master coordination model on the job site. So similar to doing document control, now we're receiving 3D models as submissions. We're receiving 3D models from consultants that represent the design intent, and we're integrating those models together on a regular basis. And then managing that process. So as we receive the information, we bring it together, we integrate it, we review it, we look for issues, we manage those issues, and we push those issues back upstream, back to the detailers to resolve, and then they resubmit their work and we integrate it again. So over the course of the project, we're managing this coordination model. It's made available on the job site to all the tradesmen and everyone involved with the project as a single source of, and the best source of information on the project. And often we're getting to an extremely high level of detail, 8 months before we're even at the point where we're constructing anything. And this enables prefabrication, enables better decision making, it allows us to control cost. So there's big advantages, and we see this as one of the big trends on the job site. One of the technologies that we're using for this model here was a Navisworks file. But there's many different modeling systems that are designed for integration to bring all these different file formats and systems that the consultants and subtrades work in into the same model, so we can achieve that value. Again, like if you guys have questions, please ask them, because we want you guys to get the best out of this. The other trend that we're seeing is clients, like I think Allan mentioned earlier. This trend for clients to request or specify a BIM model as a deliverable at the end of the project. We've seen this in RFPs as simple as a single line requirement saying provide BIM model at end of the project that is as-built, that is linked to all data, or something simple like that. And then we also see 16-page documents that are very specific about the level of detail and the quality of that model and what's in it and what the formats are and whatnot. So we're often responding to that, and this is one of the areas where we think it's still maturing, like the softwares that are designed to use these models for facilities management and link out and export data into Maximo and the CMMS systems that are out there. It's all sort of emerging, but it's emerging very quickly, and clients definitely want it, and we see probably the 5 to 10 year trend is that it's going to be commonplace to have a common specification that says you're going to provide a model at the end of the project that we're going to plug and play into our facilities management system, and there'll be a common spec for that. So that one of the things that the council sees on the horizon is the need to develop that specification with all the other associations in Canada. Allan, were you going to talk to this? Or?
So in terms of education and training and consistent standards, we're doing a lot through our education committee, and Pietro's here from George Brown. And we're looking to kind of broaden this out, but I'd like to ask Pietro if he could give us a Coles Notes update as some of the initiatives that he's looking at from CanBIM's perspective to kind of draw the academic industry together across Canada.
Thank you, Allan. The main thing we're looking at is we've found that across Canada, every institution is teaching BIM. They're teaching, and when you go in depth, you see that there might be maybe teaching a Revit course or something very limited in nature when you think about the process of BIM. So what our main intention is, after doing an environmental survey, is we want to establish accreditation through CanBIM. But our main goal is not so much to go out and evaluate the countless courses that seem to exist, but to set a standard of outcomes and objectives, and have institutions come to us and say, this is what we're offering, and if we see that it meets our established outcomes, then we will begin to issue accreditation on various levels, from a very basic level to a full, perhaps level 3 or 4. And we're in the process of finalizing those levels. Something will be forthcoming shortly. But really, we're tying everything together so that we can be a point of reference, or CanBIM accreditation can be a point of reference and a benchmark for anybody looking to hire or work within an environment of BIM in Canada. So when you see the CanBIM accreditation, you'll know that we've evaluated the outcomes of those particular institutions or courses, and determined that based on what our members are telling us and based on what we think is important, they are meeting the outcomes of certain levels. So that's really, we're trying to tie it all together and make it based on outcomes rather than individual courses.
Thank you, Pietro. So please, if you've got any questions of Pietro, ask them. There are other initiatives that we're seeing in terms of standards and consistency. We will likely face within the next 5 or 10 years an ISO standard which will govern a lot of what is being done with building information. Not that it's going to be punitive, but we're one of the last industries on the face of the earth that doesn't have core ISO standards. So Building Smart International is working at that core level, and if you think of one of those candies where you suck them and all the colors emerge and you get right down to the last one, that's at the core, is the ISO. Then working out from that are all the other standards that would be built around an ISO's compliant standard. An example being consistency using the National Building Information Model Standard out of the US. And don't get hung up on the US acronym. It is surprisingly so, given our neighbors to the south, not US-centric. It just simply originates in Building Smart Alliance. It is a standard of standards, and it is easily adoptable. There is nothing to say with NBIMs. If you see somebody in an RFP say you shall follow NBIMs in the development of BIM, you cannot achieve everything. It's like LEED. You cannot get every LEED point. You cannot do every piece of NBIMs when you're on a project. There are pieces within NBIMs, such as spatial validation, which could be used on any project. So think of it as a standard of standards, and that's what's working towards. Another aspect in terms of looking at best practices and emerging trends is around software development. How is this evolving? Tom?
So just real overview slide that kind of shows the evolution of how technology has been applied to construction and architecture engineering. Obviously, we started with CAD, that's moving into other systems. 3D visualization was introduced, and now building information modeling. And we see one of the emerging things, like I mentioned, was the integration between building information modeling systems and computerized maintenance management systems, and other sort of systems that are designed for the long-term use and maintenance of the facilities. We also see integration between project management tools. Almost every major project management tool is developing a BIM integration tool that will sort of manage the process of collecting all these 3D files from all these different sources and integrating them together. That's another big trend. And then obviously the concept of being able to bridge this model to the field and actually build what you've modeled and planned out is extremely important. The surveying equipment that is being developed and you can buy today is closely integrated with building information modeling. You can go into the model, you can extract XYZ points, import those points into your surveying instrument, go out to the field and lay out those points, and vice versa, collect the information from the field and bring it back to the model. We're also seeing other technologies, and there's a big push from Autodesk and most of the major software vendors to kind of push into mobile computing and allow anyone involved with the project to go to the field, access the 3D information, maybe via a RFID tag or a barcode system, and be able to access the 3D model where they are in the building. So these softwares are maturing very quickly, and we see that this will be a major trend both through construction, but also into facilities management. There's quite a few different softwares that are emerging. Autodesk has the 360 Glue, I believe it's called. And we're kind of toying with that. I know other major GCs in the country are starting to look at those tools as well. One of the other, I don't know if I had that backwards. There's the same sort of concept. One of the other things that we're seeing is 3D point cloud and photogrammetry and infrared tools to actually collect the geometry from the field using infrared instruments. So the top left there is the Ferro unit, which was probably the cheapest 3D point cloud tool that emerged over the past sort of 5 years, and it sort of changed the industry a little bit because it made point cloud surveying very accessible for a lower price. And it's actually coming down much faster than that. These tools are getting cheaper, they're getting faster, they're getting easier to use. The infrared scanning technology is also becoming very cheap and very accessible, where in a couple of years from now you'll have this kind of technology on your cell phone where you can go and take a three-dimensional photograph and then likely link that back to your BIM model so you can actually record the actual field condition, the 3D geometry, which will be extremely useful for sort of bridging this theoretical planning system to the actual site environment. Bottom right there is an actual drone. So these drones were military grade, $55,000 each 2 or 3 years ago. Now you can buy one for $1,200, and they fly by GPS. You can cover a huge area of land, take photographs in a very systematic way, and then turn those photographs into 3D models that you can actually extract quantities from. So all these technologies are emerging very quickly. We see them coming down in price. We see most of the companies that are involved with managing big work start to dig into these technologies and try to tie it back into the way we work. Just an example of how that drone technology is evolving. It's something that my company is interested in, but because we're managing some very large sprawling work now. Yeah, go ahead. Go to the mic if you can, because then everybody can hear you.
Since we're talking about technology, is there any technology out there that does the reverse, that you can actually kind of make a hologram in space of the model, as opposed to taking photographs?
Well, the nearest thing I could think of maybe would be 3D printing in concept, where you could actually take your 3D model and print it out physically. I haven't seen any sort of holographic type systems yet, but the total stations are pretty phenomenal now, where you can kind of go into your model, collect the points, and go to the field with your total station. It lays out the points. So in a way, it's similar to that.
Just one note: they are actually in Europe. I have seen programs where they are projecting, but you're looking it through the screen, so you can actually see the kind of virtual reality and virtual reality in the
augmented reality. Yeah, and that's, the Google glasses, even the Autodesk application, the tablet application, you can navigate in the field and actually kind of see, navigate with the model and actually see what the condition is in the field using that. And I think IKEA now has their catalog. You can put it on the floor and use your iPad to look at the furniture. Should have that in there.
There's one company I know of, Zebra Imaging, that has a holographic medium that you can actually move around the object. It's a printed out medium, but you can move around with a light source on it and see your BIM model. Actually, and see tablets, then as you move around, change your perspective around that photograph, that image, it'll change depth and things like that. You can actually change phases and see different phases of that project within a printed out medium.
Yeah, it's a very fast-paced sort of evolution of how all these tools are kind of working together to translate the information. This is actually a video maybe it'll play for us. Just a quick example. Nah, it's not going to work, is it? It's going to go super slow. But in concept, that's a 3D scan. On my computer, it runs fantastic. On Jerry's, it doesn't run at all. But maybe I'll show you that later. If you're interested, just let me know. So obviously the 3D scanning is excellent for as-builting. So Infloor heating, for example, This is actually the Calgary Airport project. We've got acres and acres of in-floor heating. The traditional way of as-builting in-floor heating was laying tape measures on the ground and off of grid lines and taking photographs and then logging those photographs somewhere, which is nearly useless if you're trying to drill some holes 10 years from now. But the 3D scan, it's plus or minus 2 millimeters. You can drop that into CAD, you can drop it into BIM, and you have that as-built condition that you can have. And it's the point cloud file type is reasonably future-proof. I mean, it's XYZ points, so we see that being useful information into the future. Same sort of concept there with in-slab conduit. One of the other trends that we see is that because the models are so accurate to what's being constructed now, you can actually utilize those models to track daily installation progress. And I think that if you extrapolate all the technology that it's available today, I think 10 years from now, you're going to have RFID tags on every single element that gets delivered to the job site, and you'll have a 3D model that updates itself based on the progress in the field. So it'll make it a lot easier for everyone involved with the project to understand earned value and progress in the field, and as a planning tool. And of course, like all this technology is now being driven down into the job site trailers. The tradesmen all have Navisworks or similar systems set up on their machines, or accessing the consolidated and integrated model for their own purposes for planning and executing the work. The last planner system, which is an aspect of lean construction, is being used pretty regular now, especially in Toronto. And we're seeing technology like smart boards and other interactive tools being made available by the general contractors, kind of facilitating this coordination process in the field. And we're kind of running a little bit long, so I'm going a little bit faster. The other big trend that we see in construction is prefabrication. I mean, obviously, this isn't a new concept, but we're seeing all the major general contractors take steps to initiate this on projects. We're seeing owners demand it. We're seeing washroom pods and other aspects of construction that are repeatable. We're seeing vendors pop up and offer that as an offering, where now you can go and order 100 washrooms at once from a vendor and have those arrive on your job site. The main value of that is schedule, not necessarily cost. But whatever you can get, you can build off-site. Obviously, you can do it in an enclosed environment where it's weatherproof. You have a better control over quality. It helps to use labor more efficiently and get your productivity up. So we see this as a long-term trend in construction as well, where I think that we'll see entire buildings prefabricated as a matter of course, probably 10, 15 years from now, and sort of stick-built construction will become a thing of the past. So in concept, that can be applied to multidisciplined corridor units. So in a hospital environment, you've got a lot of systems congested above a corridor. Using building information modeling to coordinate all those systems, and then slice the total hallway into manageable pieces and build those off-site. That's what we see as a trend. Washroom pods that I mentioned. Same sort of thing with other complicated aspects of projects, such as head walls in hospitals. These things can be done a lot more efficiently in a factory type environment when you can create the repeatability in the design. But to achieve any of this, I mean, you need a very integrated process between the designers, the subcontractors, the general contractor to kind of develop this level of value. I mean, traditional lump sum contracting, you don't have the opportunity to look for innovative approaches to construction like this. Just my last slide here in concept. This concept of 3D printing on mass scale is also a trend that we see. Who knows how long this will take to actually come to market, but the concept is you set up temporary rigs around your site and actually print out the concrete structure rather than form it out. So when this starts to happen, we're going to see some big gains in efficiency. We're going to be able to do things that are more complex with a lot less labor, and I think it'll be a bit of a game changer for the industry. But to enable all these technologies, you need to know what you're going to build. And the industry has always been very reactive, and we're very good at reacting to problems and solving them quickly. Now we need to sort of push all that knowledge up front, become knowledge workers, develop finite plans, and then execute those plans without any issues. Anyways, that's kind of my technology update. If we have questions, we take them. Otherwise, we kind of push on because I think we're behind schedule. We're good? 2 minutes for questions. At least one question, please. Anyone? Okay. Okay, thanks.